Good afternoon, families. Welcome to Reading Rockets, launching literacy skills at home. We are excited to have you with us today. We'd love for you to keep your cameras on if you're able so we could see your faces and feel more connected. Please make sure that your microphones are muted during the session so that everyone can hear clearly. Now, it is my honor to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Sadia Dumas is an experienced educational leader with over 16 years at James Irwin Charter Schools, where she served as principal and built strong partnerships for student success. Passionate about supporting parents, coaching teachers, and empowering school leaders, she emphasizes love, humility, and growth in creating excellent educational and character building opportunities for every student. Families, please join me in welcoming Dr. Sadia Dumas.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here to speak to you guys about reading and some strategies that you can use at home and some things you may want to look out for at the beginning of the school year and things that teachers may mention to you. And you may say, well, what do they mean by that? So just going over some of those things. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. So the first thing I wanted to go through is during the first 30 days of school for K through 3, and then, well, for 1 through 3, and then the first 90 days of school for kindergartners, your students should be having reading assessments. And so when they do those reading assessments, there are certain things that they are looking for. And one of the things that teachers are looking for is one, phonemic awareness. So you may have a teacher tell you that your child is struggling with phonemic awareness. So phonemic awareness is the ability to hear and manipulate individual sounds in the words. That can be the blending, the rhyming, segmenting song words. So what that assessment looks like for your kids is that they may have either nonsense words or real words, and they will have to tell each sound in that word. And so when you have students that are struggling readers, sometimes they may have issues with phonemic awareness. And so one way to test that is to give them different flashcards with words on them and just ask them each sound that's in that word. So if it's the word cat, you will ask them, okay, you will point to the C, what sound does that make? What point to the A, what sound does that make? And that'll help you to determine whether your child is struggling with hearing those sounds and knowing the sounds that each letter makes. Rhyming words also helps with that. If you go over words like run, sun, bun, that helps them to get familiar with those sounds and knowing that, okay, when I see UN, that's un. And so that helps them to figure out what those words are. So that could be, if you have a struggling reader, something that they are struggling with is that phonemic awareness, being able to hear the sounds. And one way to help kids with that is to go over flashcards, and then as the parent you can say what those sounds are, and then have them repeat those sounds. And I do have some resources. Teachers pay teachers, reading rockets. Those websites do have tools that can help you to help your child with those issues if they have phonemic awareness issues. One thing to be careful of when you're working with them on phonemic awareness is that there are, and different schools call them different things. There are either heart words, trick words, sight words. Some schools call them irregular words. There are words that don't follow the sound pattern, and those are words like they, said, words like that. Like you can't sound it out. It's not spelled the way it sounds. And so that also helps if you can find flashcards with sight words on them. And then those are words that kids just really have to recognize um, when they see them. And so going over those flashcards with students help them to learn those words. I'm going to move my paper up. Hopefully you guys can see it. Can you see it when I move it up? Yes? Okay. So these are some flashcards that I got from Teachers Pay Teachers when because I also do some tutoring as well. These are flashcards that I use with the students to help them develop their phonemic awareness. There are 5 pages of these flashcards, but I only put 2 here. And so even just putting the words together, cup and cake, helps with phonemic awareness. And then being able to say the different parts of the words helps with phonemic awareness. And then even saying if you have the word sat and telling them to take out, take the T off the end and make it a P. So then that word instead of sat is sap. Those are the type of things that help with phonemic awareness. But you can find these flashcards on Teachers Pay Teachers, and it gives you the instructions for exactly what to say, how to teach it to your child, and how to go over those. And you'll see that these flashcards are for 5 minutes. So it's something that you can do really, really quick. So the next thing that they may say that students may struggle with is phonics. And this gets to the decoding question that was asked before. Decoding is definitely essential for students because students can learn to read using whole words and just learning the words. But when it comes to words that they don't know, learning how to decode is very important for them to be able to know what each sound, the sound that each letter makes. And there is a tool that I use this to teach my kids to read. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this, but I'll tell you the title of it. It is, oh yeah, that's kind of hard for you to see, but it's Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons, and it's by Singfrid Engelman. You can get, I got mine at Mardell's, and so what it has is the different words. I'll kind of see if I can get you to see that. But it has the different words. It's hard for you to see this. Sorry about that. But it does have the different words in here and the different sounds. And so it gives you instructions as a parent how to teach them decoding. There's a pronunciation guide in the beginning of this book that will tell you how to pronounce all of the letters and all of the sounds that the letters make. And so it helps you to teach your children decoding. So knowing, that the S says S and the A says ah and the D says D, and then you can put that together. S, ah, D, sad. And so that is a way to teach your children the decoding. But it is very important that they learn the decoding. So I would definitely work with them on decoding. And this Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons is an excellent resource for teaching students decoding. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, there are some videos that kids can listen to. Leapfrog, I don't know if Leapfrog is still around, but my kids watch Leapfrog and they learn all of the sounds, and it even taught them to read because it teaches them each sound and it's fun. So that's a fun way if you have a lower elementary school student to teach them decoding, and that can make it fun for them. Let's see. And then fluency is another part that's really important. See, I'm just trying to make sure I'm including the questions. Here, okay. So fluency is also very important. So fluency is about how quickly a student reads, but it's not just the speed, because there are some kids that read very quickly, but if you ask them what they read, they can't tell you. And so the ultimate goal of reading is comprehension. So we don't want them to read so fast that they don't remember what they read about. So it needs to be smooth, it needs to have expression and allow for comprehension. And for students that struggle with fluency, core reading is really good. And what that is when the parent or teacher, whoever's working with the student, when you read it first and then have them read it, because then the students will hear how it should sound when they read it. And sometimes kids need that example for how for the correct pace to read in order to comprehend what they're reading. That's why the decoding and the phonemic awareness is important, because when students are focusing on how to pronounce the words, it's hard for them to read something with understanding. And so one thing that um, we can also do is when we're reading, and some curriculums have this already set, is if you know that there are words that are in a book that you want to read or you want to have your child read to you, you may see a word attack. That may be something that you see at home, a list of words that the students need to know before they read, is to go through and underline those words and tell the students what those words are before they read the story. And then so when they get to that word, they know it, and that doesn't stop them and interrupt their comprehension of what they're reading. And so also just reading to your child helps with that. Audio books also help with that. And one thing with the audio book that would be important is for them to have the book in front of them so that they can hear it and also see the words. One of my favorite things to do in kindergarten, and that was a very long time ago for me, but I still remember putting on the headphones and listening to the books and copying along and tracking along with those stories. So that really helps to increase a student's fluency and their rate of reading. The next thing would be vocabulary, knowing what words mean. So when students are reading something, if they're having to figure out what the words mean, that also keeps them from reading as smoothly as they need to. One passage that always tripped our students up when we were reading was one about fishing. And so, because the students didn't know the vocabulary words that were involved in fishing, like they wouldn't know lure or bait or tackle box, they had never really heard those words because they were not exposed to fishing. Then that would slow them down because they're not only are they trying to decode the word, but they're trying to figure out what that word means so that they can make meaning of the whole sentence. So that can be achieved by, again, doing flashcards with words and the meanings, or you could get a children's dictionary and just, give your kids a challenge of every night, let's learn a new word, or once a week, let's learn a new word. And then also, the way we talk to our kids, sometimes we want to bring our language down for the kids so they can understand it, excuse me, but it is very meaningful and helpful to kids to build their vocabulary when we use those big words with them and then tell them what those words mean. And so those are ways to build their vocabulary, which also can help their fluency and their comprehension. And then finally, comprehension, that's the ultimate goal of reading. Students go from learning to read to reading to learn. And so you want to make sure um, that your kids understand the story. So if you're having story time with them and they are reading to you or you're reading to them, it's good to ask them questions about the story. And not only just direct questions such as, Where was Gloria going? Let's say they were reading a story about Gloria going to the store. You can ask those questions like, where was Gloria going? What was she going to get there? Those are kind of direct questions, but kids also need to know inference. So if they say Gloria put on her galoshes and her raincoat to go to the store, then one inference question to ask them would be, what is the weather outside? And they should be able to tell you that it's raining because she put on her galoshes and she put on her raincoat. Well, they may not know the word galoshes. So then that's another opportunity for vocabulary to teach them. So these are the five components of reading, the definitions, and hopefully I gave a few strategies. Are there any questions just want to address, like for the early reader? Sometimes at school they may have different groups for reading, higher groups, and then they may not. But if they don't have that, I would say if you have an early reader, you want to keep them motivated, I would say get books from the library that are at a higher level so that they are able to have that challenge of higher level reading, and that can keep them motivated. If you have a student that is a struggling reader, oftentimes they also struggle with motivation to read. There is nothing wrong with having them read a book that is on their level that they can read. The book that they may need to read at school might be at a higher level. It's okay to have them read something that they can read because that builds their confidence. And as that builds their confidence, then they'll have more motivation to read things that are more difficult. So just making sure they have something that they can read that they can feel confident about. See. And then, yes, all of those strategies that we talked about, the different flashcards for phonics, for phonemic awareness, asking questions, all of those things can help to support students at home when you're going over those things. 100 Easy Lessons is a really good one. I do want to go up here. So for comprehension, for example, and so this is on Teachers Pay Teachers. So this is something that parents can have access to. And this has a passage here, and then it also has questions. So you don't have to come up with the questions or know which questions should I ask. These are things that teachers have created. So you can see that the passage here is very short, but then it has the questions. So those are things that you can do and practice with your kids at home as well to help with that. Go up here. Okay. Another thing that's really, really important for students for reading that can seem unrelated to reading is background knowledge. So, background knowledge is students' awareness of the world around them that they can extend into their learning experiences. And background knowledge is the key to comprehension. It allows them to make those connections. So, some ways to build background knowledge is when you take your kids to the store with you, to just have conversations with them about everything that you see, everything that you that you hear, so that they can just be exposed to different things. Visiting zoos, museums, nature parks, just some of those things that you're probably doing already, but having those intentional conversations about what you're seeing, what you're hearing, because a lot of these things will end up in the students reading, and if they have something to connect it to, say, oh, I remember I saw a giraffe at the zoo, and I remember this is what giraffes eat. Oh, I remember seeing this plant when we went to the botanical gardens, or, something like that. So it helps them to make those connections. And like the fishing example that I used earlier, even if you don't take your kids fishing, reading books about fishing and about different things, specifically some nonfiction books, maybe like a child's dictionary about dinosaurs, about the weather, different things like that can help kids to have some background knowledge so that when they're reading about something, even if they can decode the words, they're still trying to figure out what is this because they don't have those connections. So this can help them to make those connections when they are reading. Careful use of television shows, those educational ones that teach about the weather, that teach about animals, that teach about science. Those are also good tools to give kids some background knowledge, and then just having consistent conversation with your children's with your children that helps to develop their oral language skills, just talking in front of them, not our adult conversations, but just having those conversations with them at the dinner table, talking about different things. That builds their background knowledge so that when they go to school and they read about different things, for example, one of the books that we read at our school was Little House in the Big Woods, and it was talking about ironing. And so, ironing, I don't know, I put myself top at the list. Ironing is not something I do very often. So, some of the kids didn't know what an iron was, they didn't know what it was used for. And even though they could say iron and spell it and all of that, they didn't know what it was. And so it interrupted their comprehension because they didn't know. They didn't have that exposure. And so we started making flashcards of iron and things like that because this was a book that was set in an earlier time. So it was a lot of things that they didn't have exposure to. And so just making sure that kids are reading books from different times and getting that exposure so that when they're reading they can pull from those connections. And that's not the brain for kids, it's doing so much. They're having to recognize the letters, recognize the sounds, recognize how to blend the sounds, um, understand all of the words in the sentence, and understand what the whole story is about. That is a lot for a little brain. And so the more we can front load with that, the better. And the more successful they will be with their reading. So that's background knowledge. Any questions so far? I just like to stop every once in a while just to see if we have questions. Also, we really think about reading. We think about our elementary school kids, but there are still middle school and high school students who struggle with reading. And sometimes it is because maybe when they were in elementary, perhaps they didn't have that decoding piece. Perhaps they did struggle with phonemic awareness. And kids are really talented sometimes at coming up with strategies that might mask some of those issues that they may have. So sometimes it may get missed, but then it may show up more in middle school and high school when they get those more difficult words and they're struggling to sound those words out. So if you have middle school or high schoolers and you're noticing that they struggle with sounding words out, then they may have some gaps in their phonemic awareness or phonics. And so that's something that you can test at home by giving them words and asking them the sounds of each of those letters. And then hopefully you'll have this, but there's a list of different segmenting and blending exercises that students can do. And these are good for elementary, middle school, or high school. They may look different. Um, because middle school and high schoolers don't want to do something that's at an elementary school level. So teachers pay teachers is really good for this because they will give you strategies that are on a middle school or high school level and games that are more appropriate for middle school and high school. So the blending and segmenting exercises, those are exercises where you give them the word and they have to identify different sounds in that word, or they may have to delete a sound. So if you gave them the word slat, S-L-A-T, and tell them, okay, now say slat without the L sound. So then they would have to say sat. So those are segmenting and blending exercises. And those are some that you can do with students, whether they're elementary, middle school, or high school, to make sure they know the individual sounds, and then asking them to say those words. And we used to say it the quick way. So if we wanted them to decode it, we would say it the slow way, and they would have to say add. And then if we want them to say it the fast way, then they would say sad. And so being able to say those sounds individually and then together would be helpful. And then the next one I talked about a little bit, sound manipulation. That's when you have them either add a sound, delete a sound, or substitute a sound to make a new word. And like I said, there are flashcards out there. You don't have to come up with those on your own. Rhyming games, helping kids to know words that rhyme is very, very helpful. I won't go over all of these. Interactive reading is a really good one. Reading aloud to the kids and ask them to identify the sounds or the syllables in the word throughout the text. That can make it really fun. You reading to them reading to you, doing that often is really, really helpful. We talked about the phonics instruction and making sure that they know the letters and that they know the sounds that correspond with those. And another thing that can help, because some students are very visual, if you have little cards that have the letters on them so that they can move them around, that can help. If they are more visual and kinesthetic, then they're able to see it and they can move those tiles around. And you can ask them, okay, what word did you make? And have them make the new words. And it's okay to do nonsense words and to do real words when you're doing that. And there are a lot of technology. There's a lot of apps out there, a lot of software that is out there that can help with knowing the sounds. Khan Academy is one that I've used before, um, for English language and for math as well. So there's all kind of software out there that can help with phonics, and definitely consistent practice with the kids and just practicing with them with the sounds. Make it fun, give them an incentive, and just do it, I would say, a short amount of time. When we do things a long amount of time, even as adults, we can get a little bored with things sometimes. So just doing that practice, but giving them short practice because they have been at school all day. And so for them to come home and then have to practice some more, which some kids need that. They definitely need those repetitions. And so it's important to make that time really fun and entertaining, doing it with games and things like that to make it fun for them. Let's see here. So, well, let me stop there and see if we have any questions.
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. Right, so here are some resources. One that I really, really love is Reading Rockets. It has, and there, I think there's some attachment to the event that has different supplementary resources for you. But Reading Rockets is really, really good. So if your child is struggling with phonics, phonemic awareness, comprehension, there are videos on Reading Rockets that can help parents to support their kids when they are learning. And then we had the question about a student that learn to speak in Spanish, learn reading in Spanish first. So Coloring Colorado is a excellent website for English learners or students that are bilingual and learning in two different languages. So this helps you to know how to help kids when they are doing dual languages, or either they're an English language learner. So that is excellent. It helps to give some strategies for how to help them, because vocabulary can be a little more difficult because there may be words that they haven't had an exposure to, and saying, okay, this is this word in Spanish, this is this word in English, helping them to make those connections. And so this website is excellent for that. And then you saw that I've mentioned many, many times about teacher pay teacher. That's my favorite. There are so many um, flashcards, games, reading passages that you can find on teachers pay teachers to help support you in supporting your child with any struggles that they may have. It can even help you identify what struggles they may be having. So that's one of my favorite resources for coming alongside kids with any reading strategies that you may need to use.
Okay, so we have a question about a good amount of time daily to practice reading for a 7-year-old.
Okay. For a 7-year-old, I would say anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. What it kind of depends on their attention span, but I would say definitely 15 to 30 minutes of reading a day would be good.
I think I found when my kids were younger and learning to read, it was like, um, you think a lot of time is the key, but it's actually small chunks of time consistently, even like morning or afternoon, even, 15 here, 15 there. Breaking it up into smaller chunks actually moved things along even better than longer periods of time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that those small chunks of time help because kids can get pretty frustrated sometimes when they have to read for a long time, especially if they're struggling. So the short chunks definitely is a good thing. So if 5 to 10 minutes is when you can have them engaged, that is more powerful than 30 minutes of having it be like pulling teeth.
What about students who like speech disorders, low verbal output, possibly dyslexia, where it's not things are not normal? What are some special tricks for that?
So special tricks for students that may be having some speech disorders. So one thing, hopefully, if they're having those speech disorders, hopefully they are working with someone in special education. So some of those things and those strategies are things that they are going to specialize in. And one thing that we do as teachers, if students are struggling with a certain speech, let's say we know which letters those students are struggling with and which sounds they are struggling to produce, then you can make sure you know what those are and practice those sounds with them, practice words with them that have those sounds. And a part of that expressive is listening. So reading to them and letting them hear you, and then be intentional about making sure that that includes any any sounds, particular sounds that they struggle with would be helpful. If it's dyslexia, if we're talking about, because some people some definition of dyslexia is when students see things backwards or flipped. But then the other part of dyslexia is purely that um, being able to hear the sounds and confusing those sounds and not being able to hear the sounds correctly. And so working with them with that phonemic awareness and making sure they can pull out and identify the different sounds. And with students that have some frustrations with that, modeling that for them is powerful. Making sure that you are showing them what those sounds are. You say those sounds for them so that they can begin to recognize those sounds. Did that answer the question?
Sarah, this was your question, so I don't know if you feel like you got a sufficient answer there. If there's more that you want to know, if you want to unmute and just ask.
No, that's great. Thanks so much.
Okay, any other questions?
You mentioned a book at the beginning.
Mhm.
That book listed somewhere in the documents that you provided today?
It's not in the document. I'm so sorry I didn't put it in there, but it's Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons.
Okay, thank you.
I'll pull a link for you too. I'll just
Oh,
drop an Amazon link. It's a really easy book to find.
okay, thank you.
Dr. Dumas, did you want to comment on the supplemental material that you shared? Because it is
Um,
available, check it forward. And if there was anything that you wanted to highlight of those handouts or anything, I see you have them
oh,
both in English and Spanish, so thank
oh
you.
yeah. Oh, you're welcome. So yes, so those documents are from, I may see if I can share them because I do have them in my computer. Um, those supplemental documents are found on, I'm trying to type and write at the same time. Those are found in Reading Rockets. So you can find those there. And so it tells you about the phonemes and phonemic awareness. It tells you what those different things are and how to help. Let me see if I can. It gives you a lot of different strategies for helping your kids. I'm trying to do this and find it at the same time. It's a whole thing.
There's also a question about other good books or book series that you recommend for building new reader confidence.
Okay, yes, that is a very good question. So books that for building confidence, that is a good question. Let me look.
I'll maybe this will give you a second to think about it, but when my kids, once they could kind of read on their own, the Bob books were really helpful. Those sets, they had them at Costco for a while, but sets of books that build around different sounds, my kids just ate those up. Um, but I think it actually is a really common issue. Like, okay, you finished reading the books in your reading curriculum, but you're
Mhm.
not quite ready to just go to the library and pick any book. Like
Right.
this gap in between is actually sometimes hard to give your kids books. Like you could read this, or and that will make you feel like you could read anything, kind of thing. That can actually be hard to find books that fill that gap.
Yeah. And so I can read books are helpful, and I can read books. They will tell you what level, and you should be able to find I can read books in the library as well. So those do help because they tell you what level and what the kids should be working on. So those are very helpful. Those are good books.
The I can read books too often will have like a little vocabulary list in the back of like, okay, these are the new words that you may not know. So you can work on those books, those words first, and then they can typically read the book.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, those are really good. I can read books are really good. I'm trying to think because we had a scope and sequence of different books for kids to read for different grade levels. I'm most familiar with second grade books, but that is something I can get that list together and I can send it out that will have specific books that can help with those readings. I'm trying to think of some. I know Dinosaurs Before Dark is one. That's one for second grade. Um the one in the middle is The Green Kangaroo is a good book. It's yeah, it's a lower reading level, but maybe higher comprehension. Julian's Glorious Summer is one. That's more for second grade. Believe it's called The Frog and the Toad. Let me see. Is it that would be a first grade one. A third grade one could be Little House in the Big Woods. That's a chapter book. It's pretty long. So those are a few books. But if you're looking for something that can help you, like she said, the Bob books and the I Can Read books help to give you a little more information about what you're looking for and what level. Yeah, Frog and Toad is a good one. So that one came up.
Frog and Toad are having a moment. I think it's funny. They're like, there's all this vintage like t-shirts and stuff with Frog and Toad on them
Oh
that are,
yeah.
these books are like making a comeback. It's cracking me up.
Yeah. So yeah, those are good books. So on the screen now, are you guys able to see that where it says growing readers?
Yes, we
So
can see it.
so these are the type of things that are in the supplement. And so it talks to you about phonemes and what those are, that creating the sounds such as and f. So those are sounds to start with that you can exaggerate those. And that's one thing that we also when we're teaching, well, at the school where I worked at, this is how we did do decoding, we did pure phonics. And so when we would do the sounds, instead of just saying, s, we would go, s. So you had to draw it out so they can really hear it. And so that's one thing that we can do. So, and then focusing on one sound at a time. And if you have a student that's experiencing some dyslexia, just be sure that you're in contact with the teachers, with the school. Find out what are the letters that my student needs help with. What sounds do they need help with? Are they struggling more with knowing the sounds, blending the sounds together? So asking those type of questions so that you know exactly how to help your students. Um, and then making it memorable. So this is alliteration. Miss Mouse makes marvelous meatballs. Kids love things like that. And they're having fun, but at the same time, they are repeating that M sound. So let's say M is one of the sounds that they struggle with, then this would be excellent for them to come up with those sentences that have those sounds. So this is some of the supplements. So it gives you these tips that help you to come alongside your child. Like if you're reading red fish, blue fish, and then you can say, oh, there's the F sound that's in fish. So just adding those little things when you're reading to your kids can help them, especially when you know there are specific sounds that they struggle with.